Travel this week to the state of Israel as I had planned, but was able to watch on FaceTime my daughter as she was given the rank of lieutenant in the Israeli army, graduating from officer's course. It was quite an emotional experience for me. And always, as I hear the Hatikva, and I hear the phrase, Lihiyot Am Choshi Be'artzenu, that we have the ability to live as a free people in our own land. The word Be'artzenu, our own land, strikes me so deep. Even as a person who has never known the reality in my life of not having a state of Israel, it still strikes me so deep that for thousands of years the Jewish people didn't have a homeland, forced to wander the earth, always with our minds towards Israel. And I had the opportunity this week to reflect on those many visits that I had, and it turned to me the reality that it's not about Masada, it's not about the Kotel, it's not about rappelling in the Ramon Canyon or scuba diving in Eilat. It's not about skiing on the Hermon or floating in the Dead Sea or lying on the beach in Tel Aviv or parasailing off the coast of Haifa. It's not about eating falafel in Afula or rugelach straight out of the oven at Machane Yehuda. It's not about seeing the 10,000-year-old ruins of the city of Yericho that we spoke of this morning in the Haftorah. To me, every trip now has become about the cab driver or the guy flipping burgers at my favorite burger joint called Bodega. It's also for me about the soldier waiting at the bus stop and the security guard at the supermarket entrance. It's about the bartender at Whiskey Bar and the chef at Malka. All of this can be summed up in one poem by Yehuda Amichai called The Tourist. Let me just read you the last paragraph of that poem. Once I sat on the steps at the gate of the David's Tower. I placed my two heavy baskets at my side. A group of tourists was standing around their guide, and I became their target marker. You see that man over there with the baskets? Just right of his head, there's an arch from the Roman period. Just right of his head. But he's moving. I said to myself, redemption will come only if their guide tells them, you see that arch from the Roman period? It's not important. But next to it, left and down a bit, there sits a man who bought fruits and vegetables for his family. Yehuda Amichai taught it's not about the land. It's not about the historic moments that we find recalled in the architecture. It is about the people. If I were a tour guide, I'd make sure that every spot we went to, there would be someone there to tell us their story and how they believe their story contributes to the greater narrative about the growth of the state of Israel. But I can't fault pilgrims for wanting to see the sights. The logo of the tourist industry in Israel comes from this morning's Parashat, and it focuses on the size of the fruit. Says the text in this morning's Parsha, they reached Wadi Eshkol, and there they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes. It had to be borne on a frame carried by two people. And there were also pomegranates and figs. You know that logo. You've seen it 1,000 times. In this week's Parsha, they were thrilled by the land, but it was the inhabitants that concerned them. V'yisapru lo v'yomru banu el haaretz asher shalachnu v'gam zavat chalav u'devash hi The Zephyr, they reported back that, yes, in fact, it was a land flowing with milk and honey. And you should see the size of the fruit, they said. Efes ki az ha'am hayoshev ba'aretz va'arim b'tzurot gdolot ma'od. V'gam yaldei anakav ra'inu sham. But you got to see the people. The people who inhabit the land, said the spies, are powerful. And their cities are huge and fortified. And they were anakim, they were giants there. But I'm not concerned at all with their discoveries. Their report to that moment was honest and true to the facts. I'm not at all concerned about the fact that they focused both on the size of the enemy and the bounty of the land. What I am concerned about is what they did next. After they reported back to Moses, and Moses was distraught by what he heard, they started spinning their facts. It's not about the facts and their discovery. It's about their assessment. It's not about the information they brought back. It is about how they shared that information. It's not about the actual situation. It was about their spin. Ve'yotziu dibat ha'aretz. They spread rumors. In our text, we call them calumnies. They spread amongst the Jewish people the message that the land that they had traversed, the land they had scouted, is one that devours its inhabitants. Haaretz ochelet yoshveha. They have no idea, but that's what they decide to say. All the people were great in size, but the land will eat us alive. Ibn Ezra picks up on the phrase dibat haaretz. He said they spread rumors of ruination. And they spread an evil report. Dibut vayetzu dibat haaretz. They spread terrible, evil reports. According to Ibn Ezra, they spread lies. That's the same word that was used, dibat, when Joseph came back and reported on his brothers. You remember that circumstance in which Joseph reports back to his father about his brothers, about what they were doing. And that was the beginning of the conflict between Joseph and his brothers, because he reported back on them. Picking up on Ibn Ezra's comment, Rashban goes even further. He accuses them of not just spreading rumors, but actually lying. You see, when it comes to spin, there's an incredibly fine line between the truth and lies. In fact, that's the power of spin. It's in our inability to see the line. Rashbam says that what these spies did was punishable so severely because they twisted the truth. It was for this false report that they were punished by death through a plague. And those men brought forth an evil report, and they died because of it. I might change that a little bit, and that is, because of what they did, people died. Because of the way they spun the truth, the way they manipulated the facts to their own end, people died. Vayamru kol eidah lergomotam be'avanim uchvod Adonai nireh be'ol moed. Just one chapter later, the whole community threatened to pelt them with stones. Because of the way they acted, people died. It's not a lesson that's lost on us here in this country. As we have watched day after day reports of people who twisted the truth, developed a big lie, And in fact, people died. We know all too well of what it means to be a part of a nation that acts poorly. But it's not about America that I want to speak about today. It's about the state of Israel. There's no doubt that the state of Israel has its challenges. And there's no doubt in my mind that the state of Israel is surrounded by anakim, by giants, who actually want to see the destruction of the Jewish people and the Israelites pushed into the sea. But truthfully, as Simon Greenberg once pointed out, a great mentor of mine, it will never be outside forces that seek or find the destruction of the Jewish people. We'll only do it to ourselves. It's not going to be somebody else who kills us. We'll do it to ourselves. It's not the forces from the outside that will bring about our destruction. It will be from us Jews. You see, remember, it was the spies who started this process. They were leaders amongst the Jewish people. And they came back and said that we're incapable of conquering the land. We have some flaw within us that will not allow us to overcome them. There are rabbis and there are Jewish communal leaders who speak of Israel in terms that to me are extraordinarily dangerous. Not only because of the way they affect us internally, but because they give voice to outsiders who then can say, you see, even the Jews think Israel is an oppressive state. There are those outside who hate us, but there are those internally who do us extraordinary damage. Make no mistake about it. The boycott, divestment, and sanction movement is not about being anti-Israel. It's about being anti-Semitic. And when push comes to shove, Jews are perpetuating that. Think of Peter Beinart. Think of J Street, all perpetuated, and then give voice to people like AOC and Jamal Bowman, our very own representative, to speak poorly of the state of Israel, because we've given them the words, we've handed them the language, and they hide under the cover of saying, the Jews even say it. And each and every one of them, both Jewish and non-Jewish, I tell you today, have blood on their hands. They have put Jews' lives in danger. Just like this morning's Parashat said, Kol ha'edah lirgom otam be'avanim, the nation continues to gather against us and seek our demise. I know that there are people who believe that the Jewish state is a state of monsters, of giants, of oppressors. And we have to do everything in our power to push back against that spin. We all lived here in this room today. We all lived when South Africa was in fact an apartheid state. We know what an apartheid state is. Israel is not an apartheid state. I traveled to Israel a few weeks ago, and I went to Bethlehem. And I tell you honestly, there is real suffering that's going on. There is pain on both sides of the barrier that separates the Palestinians and the Israelites. And we keep making outrageous claims about their stories, and they make outrageous claims about ours. The problem is that no matter how you spin it, the more we spin, the more out of control we become. So I say again, don't go see the land. Go to Israel, judge for yourself, speak to people, speak to Israelis and Palestinians alike. Hear their stories and become involved in the process of creating healing and support. Talk to officials and talk to regular people. Don't rely on reports from sources who have agendas and goals that have nothing to do with saving life, a love for life, a desire for peace. Go to Israel. See, not the land, but see the people. Then listen to the stories as they come out of their mouths, and then make your own assessment. You'll see there is no easy path towards peace, but it will only begin when we stop spinning the other's story and start listening to their pain. Before you judge, go see for yourself. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf, page 184. Chatzi Kaddish, please rise. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah v'yalem adirach l'rutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'gala